Hello, my name is Sophie and welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into the bookish bit, I feel the need to acknowledge I look like an absolute slob. The hair has gone into a bun. I'm wearing a workout top with no intention to work out because in the UK we're going through somewhat of a heat wave at the moment and I don't handle heat very well. So my hair was overstimulating. I find sportswear is the best thing to wear when it's hot because it's the coolest clothing option I have. I'm not going to apologise for my appearance, but I did feel like it needed acknowledging. For today's video, I thought I would kind of enhance a video I made a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where I talked about the gaps I have in my reading challenges for 2025. I went through my book journal and I talked about where the gaps in the challenges I'd set for myself were and what I would, but without saying what books I would read to fill those gaps for the rest of the year. And then I decided it would be fun for a blog post to actually decide on a kind of finishing my, what did I call it? Books to finish my reading challenges. But it's like a finishing my reading challenges TBR. I really enjoyed putting that post together and I thought I would turn it into a video. So I've either picked a book or a book option that fits with the gaps in my reading challenges and I've turned it into a little TBR. I haven't pulled out all the books because that's a lot of effort and there's a huge chance that I will inevitably just end up putting them back at the end of the year. But if I ever reach a point where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what book to pick for X reason, or if I'm ever at a loss for what to read, I have a list of books I can turn to, which as a planner reader is always nice to have. So now that I've written this blog post, I've also made a TikTok version and now I'm making a YouTube video. How am I making these pieces of content different from each other? Well, TikTok is a short form platform, so I was less chatty there than I will be here. But in the blog post, I only talked about the gaps in the reading challenges that are in my journal. Whereas here, I think I will also include the challenges that are on my Beat the Backlist challenge, which is on Storygraph, which I think I mentioned in the last video. So we're getting some bonus content here. When I went through my reading journal to make this list, I literally went through everything. So I started by saying my reading goal for the year is 60 books. I've currently read 46, which at this point where we're in month 8 out of 12 for the year, I'm feeling pretty confident and I'm really, really happy with that actually. I didn't realise I was quite so close to 50, but either way, feeling good about that. I only need to read 14 more books to achieve my goal and there's more than 14 books listed in this post, so not concerned about that one. Then one of my goals for the year, not a challenge so much, but a little goal that I set for myself was that I would like to read 5 non-fiction books. I've currently read 2 and I haven't liked either of them. The books that I came up with off the top of my head that I would like to read and own are The Autists by Clara Tornval, But Everyone Feels This Way by Paige Leal, and Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. I really should get all of these books out, but I'm really lazy, so I'm not going to do that. 2 non-fiction books about autism and a biography by someone who I have less respect for considering how much they still associate themselves with the Wizarding World franchise and the terrible author. But I picked up the book secondhand in a charity shop, so I feel a bit better about it from that perspective. The next challenge in my book journal is my 25 in 2025. At this point, I have read 14 books. 2 more are on my monthly TBR. I try and put 2 of them on my monthly TBR each month. And then, yeah, there's 9 more after those 2 that I haven't read yet. So in total, the 11 I haven't read are The Boy at the Top of the Mountain by John Boyne, By the Book by Jasmine Guillory, 5 Survive by Holly Jackson, Every Colour Review by Amelia Mandeville, Jacoby's Game by Alison Pierce, Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, Scattered Showers by Rainbow Rowell, The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, The Dragon's Eye by Dougald A. Steer, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and The Cornish Village School Second Chances by Kitty Wilson. From there we go to the challenges that I say I would describe myself as passively partaking in. I wouldn't say I'm consciously trying to achieve these challenges, but if I get to a point where I'm, I finished my monthly TBR and I want to choose a book to read for the rest of the month, maybe focusing on one of these challenges might be something I choose as an option. Still not something I'm actively going to work on for the end of the year, but it's an option if I want it. I won't be disappointed if I don't finish it, I think is what I'm trying to say. The next two challenges are both alphabet challenges, but rather than just having one alphabet challenge like a normal person, I have two, because of course. One is an alphabet challenge in relation to book titles, and the other one is in relation to authors' surnames. I just thought it would be interesting. Like I say, I feel no pressure to try and achieve this challenge. It's just interesting to see how much of the alphabet I can read without really trying. And what I find really interesting, I've read 16 letters for each challenge. I have 10 letters remaining in each challenge, but they're not the same letters. I find it interesting to see which letters are less common in book titles and compare them to the letters that are less common in people's surnames. It's not relevant or important at all, but I do find it fascinating. So starting with the book title alphabet challenge, the letters I'm missing are B, J, M, Q, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, the last 6 letters of the alphabet. So starting with B, I've got 2 books from my 25 in 2025 which will cover this letter, which are The Boy at the Top of the Mountain and By the Books, so not worried about that one. J is another crossover with my 25 in 2025. I will be reading Jacoby's Game by Alison Pierce. M is a letter I would have assumed was more popular than it is, and I think I had quite a few options as well. I think the book I will be almost certainly reading is the 5th book in the Maximum Ride series, which is called Max. I could have probably counted Maximum Ride, but because it's a series name and all of the books are named individually, I didn't want to choose the series name just for the sake of ticking off a letter, because I think I used the first book in the series, which is called The Angel Experiment, as A, so I didn't want to use it again for M. But the 5th book is called Max, so I can use that one. But other options, if I don't get around to reading Max, are The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece, which has 4 M's in it, by Tom Hanks, or Marriage for One by Ella Mays, or Medea by Rosie Hewlett. 3 very different books for 3 very different vibes. Q, I think, is the most obvious awkward letter, but I actually have 2 options for it, which is very refreshing. The first of which being Queen. The first of which being Queen Bee by Juno Dawson, which is a prequel novella ahead of the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series, which I've just finished. So I would really like to get around to this one by the end of the year. But if I don't, I also have Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. For you, we have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I think there were 2 other books that I have starting with the letter U, but they were both part of series. So The Unhoneymooners is the only one I have that is a standalone, that I don't have to read other books in advance to get to the one that starts with U. For V, I've got 2 options, which are The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett or Verity by Colleen Hoover. I know Colleen Hoover is particularly controversial on the internet, but I've read a couple of her other books and enjoyed them. Not groundbreaking, but they were fine. And I have a friend who's been nagging me about reading this book for a really long time, and I would like to be able to talk about it with her. So I really do intend to prioritise reading Verity by the end of the year. For W, I have loads of options for books I could read that start with W, which makes me wonder why I haven't already read a book that starts with W. But the one I've picked that I would like to prioritise, or would be my first choice for this letter, is Wolf Brother by Michelle Paver, because this series, I accidentally bought book 2 in the series. So at some point when, I think before I lost my job, decided to treat myself and buy the first book in the series, because there was a few books that I had accidentally bought book 2 in, so I thought I'd fill those in. And Wolf Brother is the first book in the series. And since then, my husband and I have found hardback editions of, I think, the first 6 books in the series. So I now own almost the entire series in hardback, and I've not read any of them. So I really need to read them before we end up with a full collection that I've not read. Then we get to the first letter, where I don't own a single book that starts with this letter, and I think it'll be no surprise to anyone that it is X. I did consider that I could use The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which is on my 25 in 2025, and kind of cheat it a little bit. But I am such a rule follower that even in my own self-set reading challenge that has 0 consequences, I still don't feel like I can cheat. So the only book I've found that I'm even vaguely interested in that starts with X is XOXO by Axio, which is a book I have had on my radar for a while. But what I'm saying to myself is that I'm only going to allow myself to buy it if I get to the point where I've got like 2 or 3 letters left and the challenge actually looks achievable. If it's like December 30th and I've got 5 letters left, I'm not going to let myself buy this book. The next letter on my list, I was quite surprised that for Y, I only own 1 book that starts with the letter Y, and that is Yours from the Tower by Sally Nichols. So if I want to do more alphabet challenge stuff next year, I'm going to have to buy more books that start with Y. I thought there'd be more. I thought there'd be like books that start with you or yours, but there's something around the word you. But no, apparently I don't own any of them. Then for Z, it's the only other letter I don't own any books for. And I did a bit of Googling. I wouldn't say an extensive amount of Googling, but enough to find a couple of titles that might pique my interest. One of which is 0 Days by Ruth Ware, which is I think she's a thriller author. That I think she wrote The Turn of the Key, which I've heard Gabby Reads on YouTube talking about as one of her favourite books. And the other book I found was The Zone of Interest by Martin Amis. Not sure how to pronounce that surname. I feel like that's a film. I just feel like I've heard of it. I'm not entirely sure why, but if I get round to reading it for Zeds, I'll let you know. Then we get onto my alphabet challenge for authors' surnames, and the letters I have left are predominantly vowels, but we have A, E, I, L, N, Q, U, V, X, and Z. So a lot of the similar letters from the end of the alphabet, but not all the same. For A, I have a surprising amount of options considering I haven't read a book that is written by an author whose surname starts with A. But I think the book I'm going to go with is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher, which is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaires series, because it helps me progress a series that I have already started. So that sounds like ticks more than one box, and that's the best, not the best kind of reading. It's not that important, but I find it satisfying. Then for E, I need to read Feybound by Sarah El Arifi. I pre-ordered Feybound and its sequel Cursebound, and I haven't read either of them. So I really, really need to prioritise reading that one. Then for I do only have 2 options, which are Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro and The Secret of Platform 13 by Eva Ibbotson. I have read The Secret of Platform 13 because I think it's a middle grade YA book, which I read when I was a teenager. When I got back into reading and I picked up all my books from my parents' houses, a lot of the books that I read when I was young, I marked as not read and have counted in my TBR because I want to reread them to decide whether I want to keep them in my collection. So I might read that one as a quick win. I think it was a relatively short book, and I don't really want to read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro because I only bought that book because I picked it to be a comparative text in one of my A-level English literature essays, but I picked it because there was a film and Andrew Garfield was in the film and I was obsessed with him as Spider-Man. Then we have L, which is another letter I would assume is too popular for me to have not read yet, but here it is anyway. I could reread the Skullduggery Pleasant series by Derek Landy, but that is, I think there's currently 18 books plus a couple of spin-offs, so I don't really want to start that whilst I'm in the middle of so many other series. So I think I'm going to be crossing over with a book from my book titles alphabet challenge and go with The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Like I said, I love it when a book ticks more than one box. The Unhoneymooners does that. But N, I'd love to read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, talking about one book for more than one thing. Yours from the Tower by Sally Nichols. It's the Y in the book titles challenge. It can be the N in the author's surname challenge. Q is again the one I would expect to have not read yet. I do have the Illumicrate editions of the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn, and my library has the audiobook. I don't know if they have the audiobooks for the whole series, but they at least have book one. So I have put that on hold. So hopefully that will come in at some point before the end of the year, and I will listen to that. Otherwise, I will have to read. I say have to. My only other option for Q is to read The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi. Then we get to the most difficult letters of the author's surname alphabet, because for U, V, and X, I don't have any books by authors whose surname starts with those letters. And from looking at Goodreads lists, I can't really see one that I like the look of. So I think similarly to the X and Z from the book titles challenge, if I get to the point where I only have these few letters left on the author's surname challenge, I think I'll go to Waterstones, go to the fiction section, and just look at the author's surname, books by authors whose surnames start with those letters, and pick a book that I like the look of. Sometimes that's easier than looking for something like specifically on Google. But for Z, whilst I don't currently own any other books by authors whose surname starts with that letter, I have had Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin on my kind of mental TBR for a little while. I really like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by the same author, and I keep seeing Elsewhere in the works. So again, if we get to the point where these letters are the only ones left, I will potentially pick up a copy of that book. Then, done with the alphabet challenges, we go on to my bingo challenge, where I think I only have 4 prompts left. And the prompts I have left are He's a Golden Retriever, which after a very short Google search, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young came up as an option, and I own it and I really want to read it. So happy to list that one for that category. A book with yellow on the cover. We're going back to The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I need to double check whether my edition actually has yellow on the cover, but the one I saw on Storygraph did. This is more pastel than the cover I saw on Storygraph, but that is definitively yellow. I don't know how well it's coming across on camera. It might look more white, but that background is a pastel yellow, so not arguing with that one. In my summer TBR list, I can see other options, and to be fair, I'll just keep an eye on the books I'm reading. When I'm filling in my book journal after I finished a book, I do go through all of these pages and double check I've not ticked off something. If I don't find another book that has yellow on the cover, that's my backup. And now it ticks 3 boxes. The Unhoneymooners should really be more of a priority than it is. Then the next category is Lucas Picks, Lucas being my husband. When I first made the TikTok about the gaps I had in my reading challenges, I then decided to film another TikTok where Lucas chose the book that I would be reading to fulfill this prompt. And he chose the book that is on my monthly TBR, Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. So even if I don't get around to it this month, I will keep this kind of on the back of my mind to read as his choice. And then last but not least, we have a nonfiction book, which links back to what I was saying at the beginning about reading 5 nonfiction books. So hopefully if I get around to, well, I'm hoping to get around to all 3 of them, but this should be a self-fulfilling prophecy, hopefully. And that's everything for what's in my journal. So I think I mentioned this in the last video, but Beat the Backlist is a challenge I found spontaneously from a blogger talking about it earlier this year. It's created by Austin E. Decker or Austin. No idea. I found it's got a website, which I will link in the description, but it's also got a Storygraph challenge, which you can add books to each prompt. So I went through this recently, added a few books that I've read that match the prompts. Here are the remaining prompts and the books that I've picked to go that would fulfill that prompt. The first of which being A Bargain Poorly Made, the protagonist enters a bad bargain, which I've picked A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. Then we have A Wild Exploration, a book about exploring nature / the wild, and I've picked Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Based on or inspired by a true story, some amount of truth influenced this book. I wasn't aware that this book was based on a true story, but the way that I picked the books for each of these prompts is I would click on the prompt and then just look at the other books that other people had added, because I assumed they'd done the research. So I've picked The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which is in my wedding library. Then we have Beyond Your Perspective, a book that highlights a perspective from a group of people different to you. And I've picked Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, which is on my 25 in 2025, so has a much higher chance of actually being read. Then we have Can't Be Trusted, the narrator who can't be trusted by the reader, a character who can't be trusted by their peers. There's really no trust to be had here. And the book was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Then we have Celebrity Book Club Pick, a book that was chosen by any celebrity book club. I think I put this one in myself because I know that, again, Gabby Reed she read every book from Reese's Book Club last year, and Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell was one of them. And I love Rainbow Rowell, and I have this book. So that was I definitely know that this book fulfills this category, so I'll add it myself. Then we have Character is an Educator. Someone's about to learn something from this character, and I've got two options. One is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, but the other option is Yours from the Tower by Sally Nichols, which I've already mentioned, I think fulfills both of my alphabet challenges, so that would be another good one to tick off. The city skyline on the cover, a vision of a city stretches across this book cover. I've added 4 options here because I think I was just scrolling and I was trying to give myself as many opportunities to actually fulfill this challenge as possible. So we've got Babel by R.F. Kuang, City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, and or Shanghai Immortal by A.Y. Chow. Then we have Companion Novel, a book connected/related to another book, but not a prequel or a sequel. A lot of the books listed in this category people have added that are prequels and sequels. So I've added Tithe by Holly Black, which is, I think, related to the Cruel Prince series, but as mentioned, not a prequel or a sequel. Then we have another one that I've added loads of options to. Family Business, a story following members of a single family. The options we have are The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, Flawless by Elsie Silver, Caraval by Stephanie Garber, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and then Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. Loads of options there. Language Has Power, stories about language, words, the power of such things, you get the idea. Again, lots of options, one including the X book title that I mentioned earlier, XOXO by Axio, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, or Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Less than 100 pages, keeping it short and sweet. This is actually a book that isn't on my physical TBR, but I don't know if I own any other books that are less than 100 pages. This is one of the Amazon Prime Christmas novellas. It's called Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. It might be the only Ali Hazelwood book I've not read, other than Problematic Summer Romance. Then we have Librarian Rec, Get Thyself to a Library, or Other Means of Connecting with the Librarian. The way I interpreted this is that I'm going to presume that all of the books other users have added is because they have spoken to a librarian, and therefore the book has been recommended by a librarian, just not to me. So I just picked a couple of books that I own that were on that list. So we've got Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Again, if I do get around to reading that book, I will pick which prompt that is for, because I'm not doubling up. But the other option I have is Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, which is a Medusa retelling, I think. Then we have Opening Line includes an animal, mythical or real world. Any animal is fair game as long as it's mentioned. And the book I've picked from the existing prompts or the existing added books is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean. But the way I tell you, I have been keeping an eye out for the first line, including an animal, in all the books I read for months is actually ridiculous. The amount of times I've I'll just double check the beginning of this book just in case it fits this prompt. It's one of those things that's just buried itself in my head and is a weird one to have to think about. The next prompt is originally written in another language, translated works, and others that are written in a language other than your primary one. And I've picked Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, which was originally written in Japanese, I believe. Oh, I could actually include my non-fiction pick, The Autist by Clara Tornvall, because I think that was, I want to say Swedish. Silhouette on the cover, you can see an outline of something or someone but can't make out what it is. And the book I've chosen for this one is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzong. I have the sequel to this as well, but I haven't got around to reading either of them. which I could say about a lot of books in my collection, but that's not the point. Then we must be getting near the end now. We have something upside down on the cover. An object or a person is upside down from their usual state. And we have The Song of Six Realms by Judy I. Lin. Standalone debut, exactly what it sounds like, an author's debut novel that is also a standalone. And I've got Voyage of the Damned by Frances Wright. Sweet Treats, the story, cover or title reminds you of something sweet or gives you those good feelings of a sugar high. Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. That's Not Supposed to Talk, in which something that shouldn't be sentient is now a character in its own right. Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. That book is a hoot. Whether it's simply funny or features an owl, it counts. Tom Felton, Beyond the Wand. I don't know whether this is funny or contains an owl. I'm excited to find out, and this one crosses over with my non-fiction goal as well. Then we have Tiniest on the TBR, the shortest book on your to-read list. I don't know what's the shortest book on my TBR. I have an idea of my fiction book because I picked up a really short novella that was like a World Book Day novella when we were in Hay on Wye this year. But for one, this is meant to be a challenge that focuses on books that were released pre-2025, so anything that came out before the 1st of January 2025. But I have also added the caveat that I would like it to be books that I bought before 2025. So a book that I bought in February obviously wouldn't comply with this. But I have a lot of children's books in the wedding library, so I don't know if reading one of them feels a lot like cheating. So I've left that one blank for now, but we'll see. It kind of like the alphabet challenges. If I get to the point where I've read a book for every other prompt on this list, I'll find out what the smallest book on my TBR is. But other than that, we'll leave it for now. Then we have, title includes a type of flower. Any flower is fair game as long as it's in the title. And I have two options. We have A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas or Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Then we have title starts with V, not U or W. The first word should start with V. Verity by Colleen Hoover crosses over with my alphabet challenge in the most obvious way. Unusual transportation. Characters use a form of transportation that's uncommon, unusual, or doesn't exist in our world brackets anymore. And we have Feybound by Sarah El-Arifi, which crosses over with my author's surname alphabet challenge. Way back in 2020, so many books got missed that year. Let's show them. Let's show some of those 2020 releases love. And I have Loveliest by Alice Oseman, which is one of her only prose books that I've got left to read. Weather the Storm, a story or book title related to the weather. I've not found a book that other people have added that I already own, and I've not figured out whether any of these have a book title related to weather. Weird is the word. Interpret however you like, but make sure it's weird. Someone else decided that An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green was weird. And that's the last one, because the last prompt is Year of the Snake, and I've already read a book that was published in the lunar zodiac Year of the Snake. Wonderful. So those are all of the remaining, let's do mental maths. I think there's 29 prompts left. Okay, I've tried to go through that as quick as I can because the last few videos I've posted have been a lot of me rambling, and I think this is going to be another one. It is what it is. We take what we can get. Thank you so much for watching all of this video. I hope you found some sort of recommendation if you're trying to finish any of your challenges for 2025. I know it feels like we're only halfway through, but after this month, we've only got 4 more months left of the year, which still sounds like a lot, but it will go by quickly, I have no doubt. So I like to be on top of these things because I am sad and nerdy and love statistics. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're reading a great book, and I'll see you next time for another bookish video. Bye!